What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. All right, so I have some breaking news to report that's to me not really all that surprising. And that is that Kamala Harris is considering a 2026 run for the governorship of California and a 2028 presidential comeback. According to various reports, after a devastating and decisive loss to former President Donald Trump in the 2024 presidential election, Vice President Kamala Harris is keeping her options open about her political future once she leaves office next year. Harris has told her advisors and close allies, quote, "I am staying in the fight," unquote. Political reports. What that fight looks like, however, remains up in the air. According to Harris's inner circle, the vice president is considering running for governor of California when Governor Gavin Newsom's term limited time in office comes to an end in 2026. Harris is also not ruling out running for president again in 2028. However, insiders told the news outlet that it is unlikely Harris can do both. While Harris, who left Washington, D.C. last week to vacation in Hawaii with family and advisors, has plenty of time to decide on her next move, those close to the vice president make clear she will remain a critical voice against Trump and his incoming administration. Politico notes that another option for Harris is setting up an independent entity as a former vice president in which she would consider to travel across the country, deliver speeches, and maintain her political relationships in the event she seeks public office again. Um, I don't know if any of y'all recall this, but in a video I did talking about her concession speech the day after the election, I told many of y'all she was given a lot of cues during that speech that she had every intention on continuing her political career. She gave many indications in that speech. If you listen to the wording of it and the phrasing of certain things that she planned on keeping up the fight. Um, Politically, see, especially in the era that we're in, where we have an octogenarian president, a septuagenarian incoming president who should become an octogenarian in his next term, unforeseen some event that you know we don't want to happen. I guess at least most people. Um, Compared to them, she's relatively young. She's 60 years old. She'll be 64 in 2028. And in today's society, the way people are living longer, that's not very old, especially when you consider that the last few presidents we've had, except for Barack Obama, have generally been in their 50s and 60s um, going into the presidency. Look, I'm trying to think of candidates I could compare her to. Uh, Richard Nixon, okay? Richard Nixon ran for president in 1960. He was the vice president of Dwight D. Eisenhower. He was the second youngest man ever to become vice president. Um, and when he ran for president in 1960, he was just 47. But because he was attached to an administration that was status quo-ish, led by a very popular incumbent, although very popular, Eisenhower was at the time, at the end of that term, the oldest man ever to be president. He was 70 at that time. Kennedy was only 43. He was talking about bringing in fresh ideas and fresh vision for a new decade. And Nixon just seemed bland and old in comparison. And an election that he was expected to win, he narrowly lost. Then, to add insult to injury, just 2 years later, When he ran for governor of California, he lost to Pat Brown in a race that he was expected to win. And his political career seemed over, but it wasn't. It wasn't over at all. He became the voice of the opposition to uh, the Kennedy administration, which ultimately became the Johnson administration. He was a critic of the way the Vietnam War was being conducted, not necessarily the Vietnam War itself, but he was a critic of the Democratic administration as far as increasingly unpopular social I should say, really domestic policies. And he was a critic of the way the war is being conducted. Uh, and ultimately, he stayed in the public sphere for quite some time, the voice of the opposition. And ultimately, that led to his run for the presidency in 1968, in which he ultimately won, right? So I'm saying all this to say this. Um, Kamala Harris right now should just try to, if she's serious about running for office again, I think right now she should be just mostly concerned about, I mean, this is just me, making bank. I mean, she's going to be out of office soon, right? So you could call it pimping the vice presidency, whatever. Make speeches, make money, when she's ready to do so, make this the circuit, the TV circuit. Every now and then, make the appearance on the occasional political show, or now, of course, everything's moved to social media. Keep herself relevant and be a critic of the Trump administration. Okay, to me personally, I don't think it really even benefits her to run for governor of California. Me personally, because if she was a little bit younger, and say if she wanted to run in 2032, then I could see her running for governor of California. But you don't want to make it too obvious that you're running for governor and then you resign or you step down halfway into the term to run for president in 2028. It doesn't look like it's really like you really want to serve Californians at that point. You really just, you really just became governor just to say, hey, that you have an office, that you could fall back on just in case things don't work out. Really, I think she should just bide her time and attempt another run. Now, me personally, I don't think she's going to be able to be renominated because people forget she was not a very popular vice president at all. And when Joe Biden was forced out, many people were in the top stratosphere of the Democratic Party, donors, party members, senior party members. They were trying to figure out a way to get rid of both of them. Remember, they had both Gretchen Whitmer and what's his name, the California governor. They had both of them in the bullpen as a potential replacement ticket. So look, man, I think she's going to run again. Well, whether or not she gets renominated, I don't really see it personally. Now, has it ever happened before? Have we ever had back-to-back nominees? Yes, we have. Adlai Stevenson, to my memory, is the last candidate to be nominated in back-to-back conventions, 1952 and 1956. 1952, largely because of the strength of incumbent Democratic President Harry Truman backing him. And then Stevenson, despite the fact he kept resisting the push for him to accept the nomination or show that he was interested, he gave an amazing convention speech in 1952. He changed his mind at the convention, declared he was interested, and they nominated him by a landslide. 1956, he was basically a sacrificial lamb, because despite the fact that he lost to Eisenhower in a landslide in 1952, he was extraordinarily popular within the Democratic Party. Even though they pretty much figured he didn't have a shot in hell, he was their best hope. He ran in again in 1956, but lost an even bigger landslide to Eisenhower. Another guy who was nominated in back-to-back conventions was William Jennings Bryan. He was the nominee for the Democratic Party in 1896. After the fall of the Bourbon Democrats and during the Panic of 1893, the Bourbon Democrats were led by Grover Cleveland, who, of course, as we all know, in recent historical reference, was the first president to win re-election in non-consecutive terms, but his second term went disastrously. There was a complete economic debacle. We went into a depression. As I said before, the 1894 election, the Bourbon Democrats, they lost. They were massacred. It was the worst mid-term election defeat by any party in history. The Democrats lost 116 or so House seats. They lost like 6 Senate seats, and that led to the rise, I should say, excuse me, of the populist, populist rank and file of the Democratic Party led by William Jennings Bryan, who ran for president in 1896 and 1900. I'm sorry I go these little rants, man. I love election history. I love talking about it. But I don't see Kamala Harris winning. I think Gavin Newsom, whose name I couldn't remember earlier, I think Gavin Newsom's going to win a primary. I think he'll win the primaries, I should say, battle against her. At least at that time, at this time, that's how I would see it. I just don't see Kamala Harris winning. Yes, she's going to have some core support. Yes, there are polls out there to show her winning, easily as far as a hypothetical. But that's just name recognition at this time. I think if Gavin Newsom actually ran, they participate in debates, um, plus the fact that the natural core base of the Democratic Party, which skews to the left, I think I just see the natural base of the Democratic Party probably would lean toward a Gavin Newsom. They're going to move away from Kamala Harris because a lot of people just didn't really see her as presidential. You know what I mean? That's what I think. Plus, there's some other things I don't want to get into in this particular video. You figured them out. But I think she'll run again, but I think she'll lose. I think she'll probably lose. If I had to just take a wild guess, I think she'll make it to the primaries this time, but I think she'll probably more or less lose after Super Tuesday. And I think ultimately, unless there's some unforeseen events, Gavin Newsom will more than likely be the nominee in 2028. But I expected this. Kamala Harris wants to be president of the United States badly, but I don't think the country wants what she wants. But anyway, that's all I got to say about it. What you guys think?